It was a perfectly ordinary Thanksgiving, at least for our family. All kinds of delicious-looking vegan dishes decked the table. A vegan tofurkey was at the center, and then stuffed squash with nuts and dried cranberries surrounded it. And the almost sickly sweet scent of my aunt's marshmallow sweet potato casserole hung in the air. Nothing about this day was exceptional, although nothing would be the same after it ended. Conversation drifted over many topics. And as you can imagine, when you assume too much familiarity with people, it edged into dicey territory. It edged into politics. Now, most of my family is liberal, and it was not uncommon for liberal politics to come up at the Thanksgiving table and at other occasions. But this year was different. One of my family members brought her boyfriend with her. And as it turns out, he was not on board with liberal politics. Instead, he was and is an ardent Trump supporter. And he remained silent at that dinner. And then, when the dinner came to an end, it was the last time I saw him. And it was the last time I saw that family member, too. They disappeared from my life. After I found out that they were offended by the conversation, I reached out in the spirit of repair. I apologized to both of them and tried to assure them that I thought our relationship was more important than politics, but it came to nothing. They did not respond. And while I thought that time would heal all wounds, that also did not appear to be the case. Instead, those issues just seemed to fester into resentments. And my own feeling of remorse began to turn into frustration. Throughout the years, I had been a support to this family member. I had showed up and I had been there in difficult times for her. I never missed a birthday or a Christmas gift or card. And yet, because of that incident, I had been cast off. In the years following the disagreement, I found myself wishing that things had been different. I found myself relitigating the past and wishing that I had acted differently. I wish I could take back that whole political conversation. And I wish that my family member had acted differently. I would go back and forth and think about the situation, think about how extreme this years-long silent treatment had been. And then I would get angry. Why couldn't she seem to let it go? My internal experience would only get more complicated then. I would then get frustrated with myself for continuing to have those emotions. Why was I still angry? Why was I still sad about this? After weeks or months or even a year, I became judgmental towards those feelings. The feelings should have stopped. They should have been over with by now. But like a pebble in the shoe, I found that they were persistent and unwilling to be changed, a constant irritant. In fact, the more that I wished that they were something other than what they were, the stronger and more forceful they felt. Sometimes wisdom comes in the form of poetry. Sometimes it comes in the form of religious writing. And sometimes it comes in the form of cliche. And in the midst of my personal pain over this situation, a saying started coming to mind. And it was a saying that I started to repeat to myself. And that saying was, "It is what it is. It is what it is." And I just started to repeat that phrase to myself, especially when I started to feel hooked by the emotional dynamics. I would tell myself, it is what it is. And whether I could have done something differently, whether my family member could forgive me or not, whether I wanted to feel those feelings or didn't want to feel those feelings, at the end of the day, it didn't really matter because this was the situation. It simply was what it was. It is what it is. And what I started to find in that was this strange freedom I no longer felt that I had to relitigate the past. I no longer had to have a mental battle with that family member and her boyfriend. Instead, I could just accept the reality that things were what they were. This summer, on my sabbatical month, I read a book by the Buddhist teacher Tara Brach, and the book is called Radical Acceptance. For Brach, radical acceptance is a practice that allows one to embrace the shape that life has taken, to become, in the words of Rumi, a guest house for whatever feelings arise, however lovely or harsh, however they choose to show up at your doorstep. Now, radical acceptance does not mean loving the shape that life has taken. Just because we accept it doesn't mean we have to love it. We might wish that things could have been different. But radical acceptance is realizing that they are not different, that they are what they are. And radical acceptance is accepting that. Brach writes this: clearly recognizing what is happening inside of us and regarding what we see with an open, kind, and loving heart is what I call radical acceptance. If we're holding back from any part of the experience, if our heart shuts out any part of who we are and what we feel, we are fueling our fears. Radical acceptance directly dismantles the very foundations of that trance. Now, for some, this can sound dangerously close to apathy. It sounds too close to not caring enough about our lives or the world to wish for something better. But for Brach, radical acceptance is not about acquiescence. It is not about refusing to act for meaningful change in our own lives or in the world. We can still act on behalf of change. But that action needs to come from a place of accepting things as they are, accepting where things are at, rather than wishing reality was something different than what it has become. Some of my favorite poets have reached similar conclusions, though they may not use exactly the same language. The first of these is the 19th century German poet Rainer Maria Rilke. He writes, "You nights of anguish, why didn't I kneel more deeply to accept you, you inconsolable sisters, and surrendering, lose myself in your loosened hair? How we squander our hours of pain, how we gaze beyond them into the bitter duration to see when they will come to an end. They are really our winter enduring foliage, one season of our inner year, and they are to be accepted." For Rilke, it is important to accept pain as a season, as a part of life, and perhaps in doing so, to come to a fuller appreciation of its terrible beauty and its meaning. Now, we Unitarian Universalists have not always been good at this. Part of our heritage includes the social gospel movement, a movement that I have a tremendous amount of respect and appreciation for. But it has a particular approach to religion. And that particular approach is said that to herald in the kingdom of love and justice here on earth, and stating a social and political situation that abolishes all that is unsavory. Ironically, this wish to totally transform the world and to make things so radically different from what they are has sometimes led religious progressives into despair, seeing that the world does not align with our values, does not align with this utopian vision of what it could become, that pain and poverty and war still exist even despite our best efforts. That has sometimes been a challenge, a deep challenge to our theology. So perhaps radical acceptance has a role to play even here. even in the midst of our political situation. It says that we can work for change, but it also says that we have to start with the reality of the pain that we find in the world. It can't be based on a wish or a fantasy that we will triumphantly overcome the worst that we see in the world. Instead, it is an acceptance that pain exists and that the past cannot be altered, it cannot be changed. And in accepting that, we might find a capacity to more deeply empathize with others who are experiencing that pain, and then begin to find meaningful steps that will create a difference, even if it doesn't totally transform the world into a utopia. Indeed, I think that accepting the challenges in the world can reshape our capacity for compassion. The 14th century Persian lyric poet Hafiz offers this: "My friend, don't surrender your loneliness so quickly. Let it cut more deep. Let it ferment and season you as few human or even divine ingredients can. Something missing in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft and my voice so tender." Hafiz here welcomes the loneliness and the pain, recognizing that they can make us more tender and perhaps kinder, more open-hearted, more generous to those who experience something similar. Here, the wellspring of radical acceptance becomes a source for compassion for others. I think often it is from a place of knowing that pain within ourselves that we can connect more deeply to the pain that others experience, and then offer a salve that is truly meaningful rather than simply utopic. This week, my family member, the one that I had been estranged from for years, sent me a text message. She wanted to share the news with me that she is pregnant. And so we began texting, and I would like to think that maybe this is an opening, a possibility that we might move through some of this difficulty in our past, not to change the past, but to accept things for what they are and acknowledge the possibility that there might also be newness here, a new season. In the spirit of radical acceptance, I've also found some genuine happiness for her this week. That was the candle that I lit during our joys and sorrows. I'll close today with a final line from Rainer Maria Rilke. He writes, "You're not dead yet. It's not too late to open your depths by plunging into them and then drink in the life that reveals itself quietly there. May we find ways to drink in life in all of its tenderness and love, in its complexity and in its pain, and find ways to create meaningful change from that place of deep acceptance. My spiritual companions, may it be so for you. May it be so for us. Amen, and blessed be."